Kia ora and welcome to One Ancestor at a Time. I'm Suitaloa Simon Young, and every week we learn history one ancestor at a time through the stories of our ancestors. So I hope your journey of discovery is going well. These kind of things are never just straightforward or simple. They're often like fervent activity, and then life happens. Our everyday life happens, and so we must focus on the present. So I just hope to give you some inspiration in your journey, some tools, and I guess part of the key thesis of One Ancestor at a Time is that if you tell a story well enough, it's relevant and interesting to people who aren't even related to you. So today, I want to do something totally different, and that is last year, I did a short video on this channel, and I said I'm doing a crazy thing, and I did indeed do a crazy thing. My crazy thing was a trip from New Zealand to the UK, which is 24 hours flying. It's the exact other side of the world for a 6-day trip, because that was all that my budget would allow at the time, and that was all my work schedule would allow. And so it's the kind of thing that New Zealand is far enough away from anywhere that if you go somewhere like the UK, once you're there, you may as well do all the things. So what are all the things that I did? Well, let me just share with you what the plan was. There's the plan, and then there's everything else. So here we have the United Kingdom, which is where most of my DNA comes from. Most of my ancestors come from here. And so the way in is London, a gazillion different airports in London. I happened to come in through Heathrow. Then the plan was go down to Portsmouth, which is where my living relatives still live in Hayling Island in Portsmouth. Beautiful naval town, living in the same house which my great-grandfather built when he came back from New Zealand, leaving my grandfather here with his young family. And so that was a great time of reconnection. So then back up to London with my good friend Jake Pierce. So Jake I met in New Zealand, about 20 years ago this year. Jake is, among many other things, he's an Oxford qualified anthropologist. So it was a real treat driving up to London with him. We took the long way, and we explored what he would say is the real UK. Not the motorway, not the fastest way, but we went through some idyllic little villages that were quintessentially South England. And I already knew this in theory, but I learned in practice that England and Britain and the UK are so diverse. The characteristics of people, what is considered polite or good, the landscape, everything like that. So yeah, we went back up to London. We had some fun in London, exploring its past, its present, and its future. I got to visit archives in the Postal Museum for an upcoming episode, which will be about my fifth great-grandfather, the spy master of the Napoleonic Wars. Not as exciting as it sounds, but good title, right? Then I caught the train up to Edinburgh and spent some time again at an archive, learning about another fifth great-grandfather who was perhaps the inspiration for Frankenstein, and then went to Glasgow, which is probably my favorite city in Scotland, although it's not as big as Edinburgh. It doesn't have as much Harry Potter. I'm not a huge fan of Harry Potter. Glasgow is a charming place. It reminds me a lot of New Zealand in its the vibe. But also there I got a chance to go to another archive and view the handwritten letters of my other fifth great-grandfather. It's all about the fifth great-grandfathers. Then from there went to Blair Gowrie, where I met my clan, the Clan Young. So that was the main purpose of the trip. But today I'd actually like to share with you what happened on the way there, because to go from New Zealand to the UK, you've got to go through somewhere. And now we've got a bunch of wars happening. Obviously, right now we've got a whole lot of war happening, but this is September 2025. So at the time, we've just got Russia and Ukraine, and we've also got Israel and Palestine. Now, obviously, that's intensified a whole lot more, but I wasn't keen to go through the Middle East. I wasn't keen to go through the United States. I didn't want to hand my social media history of the last 5 years, even if they found nothing offensive. I don't. I agree, and I believe that the United States should be about freedom of speech. So, as a matter of principle, I didn't want to set foot on their territory because they also make the transit experience very hard from all reports. So, ironically, speaking about freedom of speech, I went through China, which has a reputation of not being so free. Now, I have a bit of experience with China. This was my 10th time setting foot on Chinese soil. My first time there in 2010, I had a lot of preconceived ideas, mostly based on, I guess, ideas that were about 30 years old at the time. There was a time in China's history that it was very hard to be an outsider, or in fact, it was impossible to get in as an outsider. The bamboo curtain was the phrase that was used. And there was a lot of persecution of Christians and other religious minorities. And it's not the case so much at the moment. It's a much more livable place. It's definitely not perfect, and it's definitely not the same. In fact, one of the reasons that I was interested in China was because it is so different from everything that I know. That's what I'd like to dive into today. So I had the opportunity to go through Beijing. Now, if you look at the map, despite me not wanting to go through the Middle East or any trouble spot or war spot, to get from Beijing to London, you've kind of got to go all the way over the war zone. So really, if you're going to travel across the world, you can't avoid conflict zones, unfortunately. So Beijing. What did I do in Beijing? Well, I had 12 hours, very long stopover. It's part of the nice airfare, but that gave me quite a long time to hang around Beijing, and it was all during daytime hours, which was great. So I planned ahead, and I thought, what can I do in 12 hours? I don't just want to hang around the airport. It's a nice airport, but So on my first trip in 2010, I had a plan to visit the Yonghegong Temple in Beijing, because we were staying just around the corner from it. But that was also a working trip. There was no time for tourist activities. So for 9 other trips, I always thought, what about the Yonghegong Temple? Obviously, I've also never done the Great Wall, and almost got there. I actually won a free ticket for a Great Wall experience, and then caught one of the worst colds I've ever had. So anyway, 12 hours was not enough for the Great Wall, but it was enough for the Yonghegong Temple. I reached out to a friend, or actually he reached out to me. We met each other 11 years ago when he was a young, brash entrepreneur, and now he's still an entrepreneur. He's a loving dad of a 6-year-old, and sort of a stay-at-home dad, because his wife's got a regular job. He's an entrepreneur, so he's got the flexibility. So after he dropped his daughter off to school, he came and met me and was my unofficial tour guide for the day, which was excellent. It was excellent to catch up with him. So let me just share with you what it looked like from my eye point of view. I had one of those cameras that you wear around your neck, so I didn't have to consciously think about filming. Let me just grab one of those. There we go. Let me just turn that right down, yeah, and let me actually share it with you so you can see it. Yeah, there we go. So I had expected, for some reason, a single building. I expected it to be quiet. I expected it to be empty. I expected it to be a museum. I did not expect that this was a fully functioning Buddhist temple. Not only Buddhist temple, but a Tibetan Buddhist temple. Now, I mentioned religious minorities before, and so the Yonghegong Temple is representative of Tibetan Buddhism. If you know anything about the history of China, that's actually fascinating, because there's the Dalai Lama, who is widely respected in many circles and is a bit of a rock star, but in Chinese government circles is considered almost a terrorist. And yet it's the same branch of Buddhism, not related to the Dalai Lama, but it's the same flavor. And so me and Buddhism, we don't know each other that well. All I know about Buddhism, all I knew about Buddhism was that there's Buddha. He didn't necessarily ask for anyone to worship him. He proposed more of a philosophy of extinguishing desire. What I do not know about and have only just started to scratch the surface of is what I sort of jokingly call the extended universe. This is my friend here, Stone, or Rocky, and he's just explaining to me about what's going on, because a few things surprised me about this journey. One was that we had to queue a long time to get in, and this was just on a Monday morning in September, and I had thought that it would be a tourist place. There'd be mostly overseas tourists. Most of these people, as you can see, are Chinese, and they are religious adherents. They're actually coming to worship and to pray, not just to have a look around. So this was challenging my preconceived idea of what the place might be. And then I was also interested in, let's have a look, the architecture, the beautiful architecture. Now, this bell that you can see, giant bell, we didn't hear it sounded, but absolutely magnificent bell. This has 3 languages on it. It has Chinese script, it has Manchurian script, because at the time this was built in the 1700s, the reigning dynasty was the Qing dynasty from Manchuria, which is it's a place that doesn't exist as a separate country anymore. So they had their own language, and also I believe Sanskrit, which is the language of Buddhism, which comes from India. I may be wrong there, but anyway, there were 3 languages. So amazing artifact. The buildings, as I said, I had perceived or imagined one single empty building. Instead, I got many. So it's a large complex of buildings that was built by the emperor, who was quite a religious emperor. And so it was originally intended to be a palace to celebrate and luxuriate the emperor, but instead he dedicated it to Buddha. This video is called Things I Never Knew. It should be called Things I Still Don't Really Know, because I said I'm just scratching the surface. And the point of this is that I didn't understand most of what I was seeing. And that is the beauty of travel. How often do you get put in a situation where most of what is in front of you is completely incomprehensible? And add to that I was wearing this very jacket because I'd prepared for my the cooler weather that I imagined that there'd be in the UK, and yet this was about 31 degrees Celsius. Woo! So I was probably a bit delirious by this stage as well. But yeah, my friend was giving me a really good rundown to his limited knowledge. He didn't have huge knowledge of Buddhism, huge knowledge of the temple, but it was really just such a fascinating time. Now, this character, who's just blocked currently by my little black case there, I'll grab a photo of him because he's really interesting. Where is he? There he is. Now, is it on the screen? No, I don't think it is. One moment, please. This fellow. So what I did with this trip was, when I didn't understand something, I took a photo, obviously, and then later on, afterwards, I said to my best friend, ChatGPT, who is this? And I said to my friend at the time, why is this facial expression so angry? And he explained to me that it is a way of encouraging people to respect. That's why it's kind of threatening or severe. And that's really interesting. So the idea is that you wouldn't come with selfish or trivial prayers, but instead respect that there are forces bigger than you at play in the universe. And so I said to ChatGPT, I said, who is this? And ChatGPT tells me this is one of the heavenly kings, Tianwang, the Buddhist guardian deities that you see in the Hall of the Heavenly Kings. Because what I didn't realize was that this complex had an order of magnitude, no, an order of succeeding levels of authority. You see, as I said, my perception was there's Buddha and there's us. And now our worldview is shaped by our own experience. For example, I was at the New Zealand Society of Genealogists branch meeting yesterday, and we were talking about naming conventions. And it's funny, we were describing non-21st century standard ways of naming as wrong. And yet they're not wrong, they're just different. So anyway, my religious upbringing was Protestant. It was evangelical. It was about having a personal relationship with God, just me and Jesus. And so this whole concept of there being several different entities involved is fascinating. So Tianwang, the Buddhist guardian deities, this is likely one of the 4 heavenly kings, Lokapalas, who protect the 4 directions, north, south, east, west, and guard Buddhist temples from evil. Not sure which one this is, but they have, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Dhritarashtra, the protector of music and harmony, Virudhaka, the protector of growth and protection, Virupaksa, vision and awareness, and Vaisravana, wealth and warriors. Perhaps this guy looks like wealth and warriors, I'm not sure. Love to find out. So they are typically shown as armored generals, fierce facial expressions, standing on demons and holding symbolic weapons or objects. So they're protectors of Buddhist law, similar in role to guardian figures that we see in other religious traditions. So they were often depicted like military officers to symbolize protection of the faith, moral authority, and order against chaos. So that was really fascinating. And as you saw in the video before, people were holding on to incense and bowing to many of these different things. So amazing to find out what that's all about. Now, here's another, which is quite different. Hang on. Working on the elegance of the transitions here, not quite there yet. So this is another one that I asked ChatGPT, who is this? This is Skanda. And you can see the sign saying no incense on the table. So it's because it's a working temple, there's a mixture of museum-like preservation, because a lot of these objects, these statues, these pieces of furniture are hundreds of years old. And it's amazing that they've been preserved so well and so long. But there's also a functional day-to-day working aspect of it. So anyway, this is Skanda, known in Chinese as Wei Tuo. And so again, armored warrior appearance. So this is not Buddha, this is a protector figure. Standing posture with the palms together, although actually ChatGPT's read that wrong. One hand is held up in blessing. There is a weapon often implied, which is a symbol of protection of the Dharma, and a position facing inward towards the main halls. So again, this is a Dharmapala, considered the guardian of monasteries and believed to protect the scriptures and practitioners. And often placed just after the Hall of the Heavenly Kings, because yes, there was certainly a progression going through. And I asked my friend, not that he claimed to be an expert, but I asked, what are people praying for? And he goes, well, a promotion, a boyfriend or girlfriend, just the things that we all kind of wish for or hope for. But there's great. Now, it's different from the tradition that I grew up in, which is very emotive and very spontaneous and very personal. I mean, it may be personal, but it's more of a deal being made. In my perception, it's about the number of times you bow, or I don't know what I don't know. So heaps to learn. It's such a good experience. to realize how little you know. So why are people praying here? This is what ChatGPT says. Unlike the heavenly kings, the one we just saw, Wei Tuo is more directly associated with protection of practitioners, success in study or discipline, a very Chinese thing to pray for, strength to follow the Buddhist path, because as in many religions, the world, our flesh, our body is full of things that are not good for us, but we really like. And so as far as I understand, the Buddhist path is about extinguishing desire, just ending up in a state of wanting nothing. And that would take a lot of strength. So so very interesting. I've just given ChatGPT just a few tasks, and because this is a brief video, just ask brief questions, but there's always more to learn, which is very exciting. Now, there wasn't only statues, there was also, I'm not even sure how to describe them, pieces of furnishing like this. I don't even know how to describe this. This is a Tibetan Buddhist victory banner, Shangchuang, according to ChatGPT, sometimes called a Dharma victory banner. So this reflects the strong Tibetan Buddhist tradition rather than purely Chinese Buddhism. It's a ceremonial hanging banner symbolizing the victory of wisdom over ignorance and the triumph of Buddhist teaching. So you can see layered colored silk bands, which is the ritual decoration. You can see the vertical cylindrical shape derived from ancient Indian victory standards, and the 5 colors: red, yellow, green, white, blue. Now, for me, a Westerner, this reminds me how much or how little I know of this whole area. I can point to India and China on a map and Tibet, but I know very little of how they relate to each other. And Buddhism is a lot of the way in which Indian culture came into China, but then most definitely became its own thing. And a lot of these, not quite deities, but a lot of these extended universe characters come from Chinese mythology. So that's really interesting, the way that religion adapts itself into the environment that it finds itself in. And I jokingly say extended universe, but very seriously, and without hoping to be offensive, I really believe that the modern day extended universes, Marvel, Star Wars, Star Trek, attract something in our human spirit, not in the way that people literally believe that the Starship Enterprise exists, or that there is a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. We know that it's fictional, but the amount of passion that people put into it is incredible. And of course, human nature being what it is, people divide into tribes. The people who only like the first 3 movies of Star Wars, the people who have come to love the prequels, the people who believe that the sequels are not canon, which is an idea that comes from religion. And yet both aspects of religion, that it can be very divisive and cause people to act against their humanity in the pursuit of dogma, it can also be wonderfully human. So just as Buddhism teaches us to turn away from materialism, just as Christianity teaches us self-sacrifice for one another, in the same way, the stories that get built layer upon layer, Star Wars, for example, there's an amazing video by Dave Filoni, who is the showrunner for The Mandalorian, and he talks about Anakin Skywalker, the future Darth Vader, and the pathway that he could have taken for good or bad. Now, that's a very, very deep and meaningful topic. And he talks about how Anakin's original mentor would have raised him as a son, as a father he never had, versus Obi-Wan Kenobi, who just raised him as an older brother. It's incredibly deep. It's incredibly speaks to our human condition, speaks to morality, speaks to good. Now, if that's not one of the good things that come out of religion, I don't know. And it's coming out of a modern day creation called Star Wars. Yes, of course, it's commercial and all that, but the reason it's commercially successful is because it speaks to right here. That's why it keeps going. That's why we want to keep exploring that universe. But anyway, enough of Star Wars. Let's dive back into Beijing. So that was my experience in Beijing. Really just hitting the tip of the iceberg, seeing the amazing architecture of the Yonghegong Temple and learning how little I knew. Fast forward to my trip. So I went from Beijing to London, Portsmouth, Edinburgh, Glasgow. Now, I forgot to mention, I also went to Aberdeen because my Highland ancestors on my mum's side, the Frasers and the Mackenzies, they were, of course, strict Presbyterians, Presbyterian Church, the Church of Scotland, and they were Gaelic speakers. So I wanted on this trip to hear the language of my ancestors in a religious service in its kind of native setting. And yet I was very surprised to find that there was only one church on the east coast of Scotland, because I didn't have the time to drive for a day, basically, up to the Scottish Highlands or beyond. I just had the east coast to work with. So I went to Aberdeen. Now, the funny thing is, the only church that has a Gaelic-speaking priest is Episcopalian, which is Anglican and very similar to Catholic, except without the Pope. And so, sadly, the priest that spoke Gaelic, that does a Gaelic mass every Saturday, was not there that Saturday. Just my luck. But I did, however, get to visit. It's called St. Margaret of Scotland's Church, Gallowgate. And what was really interesting was that it was just as foreign to me. Now, I'm a Christian. I've been raised in church all my life. And yet, St. Margaret's Gallowgate was a foreign visual language to me. Not as foreign as the Yonghegong Temple. Now, there are some things that are obviously very familiar, the cross on the top, the way that windows are done, all that kind of thing. Now, also, the language, thankfully, was English, which I could understand, and that was also very nice. I took some photos. I took photos of anything that was interesting, because just to get over the disappointment of the priest not being there. But yeah, this was lovely. This is from Julian of Norwich, who is a really interesting character in the extended universe. A very thoughtful person. This is a place where prayer is wont to be made, a house which Christ by his sacramental presence makes a home. Our courteous Lord willeth that we should be as homely with him as heart may think or soul desire, which is very interesting. So this is a magnificent, grand building, and yet these words are saying, make yourself at home. Our courteous Lord is welcoming you in as a guest, but let us beware that we take not so recklessly this homeliness as to leave courtesy. So while Yonghegong Temple had the guardian with a fierce expression, this had a slightly gentler exhortation to the same thing, which was respect the sacred space that you're in. Absolutely fascinating. Now, also, we've got, because, so I was raised in the Protestant tradition, which is where it's just me and Jesus, basically. Well, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. We didn't learn too much about the saints. In fact, our kind of whole belief system was based on the Bible only, and not the sort of additional characters. And so in modern pop culture parts, that is like the people who just believe in the movies only and not the comic books, the novels, or the audio adventures that are with many different things. And it does make you wonder, as an evangelical Christian, how much of my faith was in the Bible rather than in the God of the Bible. Anyway, that's a whole nother message for another day. But it does make it should make you reflect on your own biases, your own beliefs. So obviously we had things like this beautiful gold crucifix. This is the difference between what is called high church and low church. The Episcopalian or Anglican high church is very close to Catholicism, whereas Presbyterianism was very much about simplicity and I guess similar to Buddhism, rejecting materialism and rejecting things of this world or things that could be an idol. Whereas the Episcopalian tradition uses art, really embraces art, sculpture, materials like gold to go, God deserves our best and our creativity. And there's something really, as a creative person and as the son of an artist, I really appreciate that and really welcome that new perspective. So this is obviously a crucifix. This is a depiction of Jesus. Now, something a little bit interesting about the history of St. Margaret's, they gave me a booklet, which was great to learn about the history of the place. It was actually set up for the poor. Aberdeen is a city that is sort of known as a real working class place, although it's quite a wealthy city now because there's mining nearby. But in its time, in the time that this church was set up, 1700s or 1800s, there was a lot of poor people. And so the paradox of this church is that it is grand. It's beautifully designed. There's a lot of beautiful architecture and materials and that sort of thing. And yet its core mission was to serve the poor. There's the altar, the big structure, the basically the sacred space that you're being invited into. And just one more kind of extended universe character, and that is this guy. And so I asked, again, my buddy, ChatGPT, I said, this is Francis of Assisi. Now, again, Francis of Assisi was somebody who made his name by renouncing wealth. He born into wealth, and yet gave it all away. Had a vow of poverty, and encouraged those who followed him to do the same. And here's a statue of him. So he is known by having a rope belt with 3 knots, because of the 3 vows that Franciscans take: poverty, chastity, and obedience. He's carrying a bird in his hands because famously St. Francis is famous for preaching to animals. He was known to say, preach the gospel to all creation, sometimes using words. And yeah, so there's the legend about him being able to communicate with animals. Interestingly, over in Glasgow, there's also another famous saint who had things to do with birds, Saint Mungo. That's another story for another day. And humble posture and bare simplicity. So yeah, St. Francis was born 1181, died in 1226, founder of the Franciscan order, known for radical poverty and service, associated with care for nature and animals, and one of the most widely recognized Christian saints. So he's representing care for creation there, gentleness, simplicity of faith, connection between spirituality and the natural world. Now, just playing with the idea here, and that's kind of what we do when we receive new information. There's asceticism, which is where you want to be so simple that you just reject almost anything. You just live on water and bread and live in a hole in the ground, that sort of thing. The danger of that is that we become proud of ourselves, of how spiritual and humble we are. And so what's really interesting about St. Margaret's of Gallowgate is that it is glorious and yet describes itself as homely. It's beautifully created, and yet it's in service of the poor. So it's always keeping these two things in balance. So yeah, that was basically the unexpected parts of my trip. I'll get back to family history next week, of course, but I wanted to share with you just the best thing about travel, which is being exposed to something that we don't know. And of course, we do know some things. We have our life experiences. The older we get, the more we have, obviously, to play with. And so what I love about coming in touch with new things is that new information interacts with our old information and should cause us to ask questions. Now, there's part of us always that comes and goes, oh yeah, I know this, I know that. We love knowing stuff, but learning stuff is even better. And so if you get the chance, look, the thing that I realize is that in my own city, in Auckland, there are also places that I can go to experience complete difference. I don't have to travel overseas. But often it's only when we travel overseas that we have the time. We have set aside the mental energy to go and experience something completely different. So yeah, just my encouragement to you this weekend is go try something completely different, and come back here, leave me a comment, let me know how it went. And this is also our family history as well, because our forebears lived in different places than we did. They lived in different times. There's a saying that the past is a foreign country, even if it's exactly the same place. Even my ancestors who lived in Auckland, where I live now, they had a different life. They had a different mindset. They have a different worldview. And the forebears who come, sorry, the descendants who come in the future, they'll have a completely different outlook on life, and they'll look back on us with some curiosity, I'm sure, if we leave anything to them. So thank you very much for joining me on this little detour on the family history journey, and thank you for learning history with me, one ancestor at a time. If you want to keep in touch with email updates, please go to oneancestor.co and subscribe. And please subscribe to this channel so you get every episode as it comes. Thanks very much, and we'll talk soon. Ka kite anō.